If I could have everybody please take their seats. We have Secretary Shulkin of the VA has arrived. So I would ask all the comrades that are sitting, or standing, I should say, on the sides, to please come back in and take your seats, both left and right, and we will conclude the awards after Dr. Shulkin's remarks. Please, all of you that I see heading towards the doors, take a seat. Thank you. Comrades, it is now my privilege to introduce the man with the toughest job in the country, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, the Honorable Dr. David Shulkin. The Secretary is the first non-veteran to lead the Department of Veterans Affairs. But as we often say, you don't have to be a veteran to love veterans. And Secretary Shulkin undoubtedly loves veterans. He was born an Army brat at Fort Sheridan, Illinois, where his father was stationed as an Army psychiatrist. Both his grandfathers served in World War I, and one of them became the chief pharmacist at the VA in Madison, Wisconsin. He first joined the VA more than a year after a crisis in the access and confidence engulfed the entire organization. He was hired because of his vast private sector experience in some of the nation's leading public and private medical and teaching institutions. He was also hired because he cared. As the president and CEO of the Beth Israel Medical Center in New York City, he would walk the wards after midnight just to check on the patients. This was after it was discovered that the night shift was providing a lower quality of care. And he was hired by President Obama to be the VA's Undersecretary for Health, to bring his healthcare management experience to a VA that seemingly forgot who their customers were. And he was rehired by President Trump to continue building on the successes of his predecessor. And now that a new Employee Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act was signed into law, we fully expect the ship to be righted under his leadership. Mr. Secretary, you have many challenges, not the least of which is an employee culture of dismissal against appointed leadership. But I promise you, or dismal leadership, let me rephrase that, least of which is an employee culture of dismissal against appointed leadership. But I promise you that the VFW will continue to be there to help you fix the VA, just as we will be there to point out necessary course corrections too. Our job as veterans advocates is to ensure VA succeeds, and I sincerely appreciate the fact that the VFW is able to provide a voice that you want to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, the Honorable Dr. David Shulkin.
You've been working hard today. Where's the clicker? Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you for a short time this morning. I do have slides, and so I always like to start with what our mission is. And every day at VA, we are there to care for those who have borne the battle and their families and survivors. That is particularly important this week because this is American Heroes Week, and I couldn't think of a better place to be at the beginning of American Heroes Week than with all of you. So I want to just thank all of you for everything that you have done and continue to do for this country. I particularly want to thank VFW. I think the slogan, "No one does more for veterans," is so apt in this case. Everything that we do is really with your support and help, and you help make sure that we're making the right directions. Your leadership is really the best in class. Can't imagine a better commander who served you than Brian over this past year. And Brian, thank you for everything that you've done for VFW and for the country. And your executive director, Bob Wallace, I think is just, no one has a better knowledge of veterans issues. And when we talk about no one does more for veterans, Bob not only does that, but he allows us to have Katie, who helps us in VA as well. So thank you. You know, VFW testified 22 times last year in front of Congress, helped file 116,000 claims for veterans, resulting in over $1.2 billion of benefit back to veterans. And most importantly, at least to us at VA, you as members donated more than 8.6 million hours of time to help your fellow veterans. So thank you for all of that. Since I became secretary, I pledged that I was going to make sure when I saw problems in the VA, even those that have languished for decades, that I was going to come out and talk about what those problems are. And I was going to talk about them until we actually made sure that we began to address them. So shortly after becoming secretary, I released what I called the State of the VA, where I identified where our problems are, what the issues that we together need to fix if we're going to get this right for our veterans. And that resulted in a list of 13 different risk categories. And I'm not going to read through all of them, but these are areas that if we don't make serious decisions and put resources into these areas, that the problems that have plagued the VA over the last couple of years will continue to plague the VA. And I'm committed to making sure that we don't do that, that we address these issues. And so, thank you. And so you're not going to hear from me that everything is perfect in the VA, that everything's going well. What you're going to hear from me, hopefully, is I'm going to talk about when we have problems, and I'm going to continue to talk about the problems if we're not solving them. But I'm also going to talk about the things that are going well. And I do want you to understand that there are many things that are working well in the VA, that we're moving in the right direction. We're seeing more veterans in the VA healthcare system than ever before, millions more than the previous couple years, a 46% increase in the number of appointments of veterans who are being able to be seen out in the community. Our wait times, we've seen a 64% reduction in those that have been waiting a long time for their care since 2014. In terms of quality, which we measure on a regular basis, 82% of our VAs are showing significant improvements in quality, which is what you want to see. We obviously still have 18% that have more work to do. And in terms of overall confidence in the VA, in 2014, just 42% of veterans said that they felt confident in the VA and caring for them. Today, that number is 65%, not where we need it to be, but as I mentioned, I think moving in the right direction. When you ask veterans themselves what they think about the VA, and many of you have your own experiences, again, not everybody says it's a perfect experience, but this study, which was just released, the reason I like it is because there's no filter between the VA and the veteran. Just veterans who are going on to Yelp and indicating whether their experience at VA hospitals was better or worse than experiences in the community hospitals. You can see, and this is just in the last week, that VA rated a 3.7, where community hospitals rated a 3.19. And so, again, more indication that many of the things that we're doing really are moving in the right direction and getting better. Now, what I want to focus on in just a few minutes I have with you are really the 5 priorities that I'm focused on for transforming the VA. And the first of those 5 priorities is to give veterans greater choice. Now, when I talk about greater choice, right now we have a system that I would call a rules-based system. If you want to get choice in the community, you have to live 40 miles away from a VA that offers a primary care physician, or wait more than 30 days for an appointment. And that's a hard and fast administrative rule. I believe we need a system that's not based on rules, but it's based on your clinical needs. And so we've proposed changing our current system of allowing veterans choice to be more clinically based. So based upon whether you actually need to be seen sooner, based upon the quality of care being delivered in the VA and the community, and offering a new benefit for urgent care or walk-in clinics if you just need simple care so you don't have to drive many, many miles to a VA medical center but get care closer to where you are. So, thank you. So if you take an example of a 68-year-old veteran who wants to be seen by a cardiologist, and it's determined that clinically they should be seen within a week. Under our system, if the VA doesn't offer that service, you would be sent immediately out into the community to see a cardiologist. If the VA can see you, but they can't see you for 16 days, but we've said you need to be seen in the next week, you would be able to go directly out to the community to see a cardiologist. Or if the VA offers the service within 7 days, but it's not clinically appropriate for you to have to come into a VA. Let's say that you have problems with transportation or you're homebound, and so being closer in the community makes sense. We want that clinical flexibility to allow veterans to be able to get the right care at the right place. The second priority that we're working on is to modernize our systems, and we want the very best for our veterans that this country can offer. I've recently made a decision that the VA is going to leave its electronic medical record, which is now approaching 35 years old, and adopt the same system that the Department of Defense has, which is a new commercial system. And in that way, a veteran, from the time they enlist all the way through end-of-life care, will have a single electronic medical record where all of the information that's been created about their own personalized health care is available in a single source. And this is going to give us a modern system that, frankly, is one that the veterans deserve. We're also modernizing our facilities. And as many of you know, there's a great variation in the facilities throughout the country. We have over 500 buildings today that are from the Civil War and Revolutionary War. You can see some of the pictures up here, the officers' quarter in Fort Thomas, Kentucky from 1895. This old gas station that still is one of our buildings in Minneapolis. But you can also see state-of-the-art facilities like the one on the right in Palo Alto, which are really probably the finest facilities available anywhere. And what I'm committed to doing is to modernizing our facilities to make sure that everywhere that VA really has top-notch facilities. Our third priority out of the 5 is to improve the timeliness of the services that we provide to you. Of course, that involves wait times and access to health care, but it also involves quicker decisions on appeals and better and quicker decisions on disability claims. So let me just show you how we're going to do that. On wait times and access to care, we now have posted wait times of every medical appointment in facilities across the country online. It's accesstocare.va.gov, and you can see how long it will take for you to be seen at any of our VA locations. No other health system in the country posts wait times. We're the only one. But I think it's so important to let people know what our wait times are and to hold us accountable for those wait times that we've gone and we've done that. If you've not been to the site, and I'd encourage you to do it, you simply put in your zip code or the name of the town where you'd like to get care, and you can see all of the VA medical centers and outpatient clinics all around your area and what the wait times are, so that you have a sense and you can actually make decisions based upon how long you'd like to wait for care as to where you want to go for that care. We've instituted same-day services in primary care and mental health care in every one of our major VA medical centers, the 168 medical centers. By the end of this calendar year, we're going to have same-day services at all of our outpatient clinics as well. So you can see now that 97% of all of our appointments are completed within 30 days of when the veteran prefers the date. We also are investing more in telehealth, particularly in rural areas where finding healthcare professionals is increasingly challenging for us. You can see I still practice in the VA system, and here I am practicing from my office in Washington in Grants Pass, Oregon, where I see patients there using telehealth. No other system in the country uses telehealth the way the VA does. 717,000 veterans today getting their care through telehealth through the VA, and that's only going to expand in the near future. We're also doing better on timeliness of appeals, but we do need a law change here. The appeals law was last updated in 1933, and the House has now passed a bill to change the appeals processes, and we're waiting for the Senate to act on that. So we really encourage the Senate to pass this. The President's eager to sign this into law so we can do better on fixing the appeals process for all of you. Thanks. In terms of our claims, we have a new process that we're working on called decision-ready claims. Many of you may be familiar with this. We've been testing it in various VAs throughout the country. We are going to commit in decision-ready claims to getting an answer within 30 days of a claim being filed. We've been doing this now in these pilot sites quite successfully, and in September of this year, we're going to roll this out nationally. We think that's going to make a big difference. You can see with our claims that we still have a lot of work to do, but we are making progress. Decision-ready claims should be a big help for us. The fourth priority of 5 is to focus the current resources that we have more efficiently. And that means to strengthen what we call foundational services. I'm going to show you that in a second. To work closer with the Department of Defense so that we can use our resources better by working closer with them, and to make sure that our management practices are really focused appropriately and working well for veterans. So we all know that VA does many things well. These foundational services like traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury and post-traumatic stress and behavioral health and rehabilitation prosthetics. But we want to double down on these strategies. We want to do these even better. We want to make sure that these are the absolute best available services anywhere in the country. So I've directed our medical centers to put more resources into these programs to make sure that we have the very best technology, the very best people, and the very best access for these services. So you're going to see a strengthening of these services over this coming year. We're also working much closer with the Department of Defense, as I mentioned. Secretary Mattis and I have a close working relationship where we're matching where our facilities are and where we could actually begin to start working closer together, save taxpayers money, but also improve the quality of our resources. In terms of management practices, and Brian mentioned this briefly, we for too long have put off making sure that employees who have lost their way, lost their values, no longer are part of the VA. And so where it talks about, thank you. What this slide says is dealing with employee issues can be difficult, but not dealing with them can be worse. And so we're dealing with them now. We just recently had signed into law by the President the Veterans Accountability and Whistleblower Act of 2017, which gives me as Secretary greater authority to remove employees that have lost their way. Within a week of doing that, we published, and we continue to publish, updated every week, all of our actions where we are removing employees, managers and frontline employees who have deviated from our values. Since January 20th of this year, we have fired, suspended, or demoted over 700 employees, and you can see it online, and it's updated every day. It's not that I look forward to having to take these actions, but we are setting a new culture at the VA that it is a true privilege and honor to be able to serve our veterans, and you shouldn't take it for granted that you have one of these jobs, and if you deviate from our values, we are going to hold you accountable. And we're holding ourselves accountable by publishing these actions and updating them weekly. The last priority, and really my only clinical priority that I talk about right now, is suicide and veteran suicide. Now, all across America, even in the general population, suicide is at an epidemic crisis, a public health crisis. You can see since 2001 to 14 that suicides among all Americans went up 23%, but among veterans it went up 31%. And you can see that, particularly among females, that female veteran suicides went up 62%. Now, here's what I want to show you. The difficulty in addressing the issue of veteran suicides is that this can't be just the VA. If you take a look, between 2001 and 2014, if veterans were using the VA, the suicide rate went up 5.4%. But for veterans that aren't using the VA, it went up 38.4%. Take a look at the last line with female veterans. For women veterans that were using VA services, suicides actually went down 2.6%. But for women that weren't using the VA, they went up 81.6%. So what this says is we need to be working much closer with community groups and organizations like yours to make sure that we're doing everything possible to address the issue of veteran suicide. We've developed predictive tools to be able to identify who's at high risk for suicide, and we're now proactively calling veterans and bringing them in if we think that they're at high risk. We've added a lot of resources to our Veterans Crisis Line. We used to have 30% of our calls that would roll over and not be answered by VA employees. Today, that rollover rate is less than 1%. I made a decision, one of my first decisions when I became secretary, to extend behavioral health care to those that were discharged other than honorably. Not dishonorably, but those that were other than honorable, because as you know, our suicide rates are high among those that don't have access to our services, such as those that were discharged other than honorably, and among the homeless population. So today, if you are a other than honorably discharged veteran, we will provide you emergency mental health services at any VA if people come in and ask us for help. So thank you. We will continue to focus on new ways to be able to help our veterans. I mentioned homelessness. We've made a great deal of progress by reducing veterans' homelessness over the last 5 years by 47%. We've done that through a strategy called Housing First, where we first seek immediate housing for veterans who need to get off the streets, and this has been a very successful strategy for us that communities around the country have adopted. Another strategy that helps in both homelessness and in suicide are our veterans treatment courts. We've seen a 30% reduction in veterans homelessness on veterans that have been gone through the veterans treatment courts as opposed to the regular legal system, and an 88% reduction in arrests from the year before. So we know getting veterans into the right services is important. We've also seen and continue to focus on veteran employment. We now have commitments from employers to hire over 1 million veterans, and we're actively out there matching veterans with employers, and this is something that we think is so important since we believe veterans make the very best employees, and now businesses are beginning to understand that and are actively seeking them to recruit them. And finally, let me just mention what lies ahead. The President's budget for VA is a very good, strong budget, $186.5 billion. It's a 3.6% total increase in funding, and you can see for healthcare, a 7.1% increase in discretionary funding. This is a good budget. It's important that we get this passed. It's important that Congress support this budget. Let me tell you what it's not. It is not a budget for privatization. The President and I agree that privatization is the wrong path for the VA, but we do want to give veterans greater choice in decision-making, and we want to help strengthen the VA system. Thank you. For those who don't understand what the budget shows and says that it is a budget that supports privatization, just take a look at the numbers. We're seeing a 5.7% increase in medical services into the VA. That's $2.7 billion more into the VA system. And we are seeing a larger increase for community care to help veterans get care in the community, but it's only $965 million. So there's 3 times more money being into the VA system itself than into community care. And so my vision for the VA is an integrated system of what's best in the VA and utilizing the community when the community does it better. And this budget helps us do that. So what you're going to be seeing over the next couple months is more and more actions and decisions that will help keep our promise to you to make sure that we're doing better every day for our veterans. And each month you will see a number of new initiatives, new decisions that deal with those 13 risk areas that I talked about in the beginning, that if we don't fix, we won't have a successful transformation of the VA. We're going to do this. We're going to stick at it. We have the President's commitment. We have bipartisan support in Congress. And mostly, I know we're going to do it because of you and our partnerships with VFW and our veteran service organizations. Thank you very much. I enjoyed the time with you today.